Hi there. Welcome to live stream Yoga with Louise, tips and cues to keep you safe and strong on the mat. For today's Pilates class, we are going to be challenging our balance and coordination at the same time that we're working on building confidence and strength on the mat, using a Swiss ball or electing to play freestyle with no equipment. As always, play where you're comfortable, modify your movements if you need to, picking a pace that works comfortably for you, and maybe pausing the stream should you need to take a rest. You ready? Let's hit the mat. We're going to start off for today's class standing more or less in the middle of your mat. Stand up nice and tall, stacking your feet in parallel underneath your hips. Tuck your tailbone under, pull your belly button in. If you do have a ball, you're going to hold the Swiss ball firmly between both hands, pushing softly into the ball so that your arms, chest, upper back, and shoulders are all connected. If you're working without a ball, you're going to mimic holding the ball between the two hands. You're going to stand up nice and tall. And on an inhale, keeping the legs extended, so no bend in the knee, you're going to float up onto the toes as you bring the ball up to about shoulder height and float back down to your start position. I want a slow and controlled float up, almost as if you were taking the ball and trying to reach the ball and tap the ball in front of you. Keep that little tuck of your tailbone and your belly button pulled in. Inhale as you float up. Exhale as you peel back down. Let's do 5 more. Last one, then we're going to add to that basic movement. The next time you come up onto your toes, you're going to bend the knees and bump the weight back, floating the ball up a little bit higher. So you're almost sitting back in half a chair, coming up into a high haunch position and trying to lift the ball maybe just a little bit higher, maybe at about head height. If you're doing this freestyle, you're going to mimic the frame, keeping your arms in parallel, and pretend that you're softly squeezing in to a prop. Let's do 5, 4, 3, 2, last one. This time, keeping your feet flat on the floor, we're going to come into a chair seat. So you're going to bump the weight back into your bum and your heels, floating the ball to about shoulder height and leaning forward as if you wanted to tap the ball into the wall and then coming back to your start position. Bump the weight as far back as you can while reaching forward with the ball. If you're doing this freestyle, same rule applies. Long and lengthen through the arms as if you wanted to tap the fingertips to the wall in front of you. Make sure that you're not leaning forward and bringing the heels up off the floor. Push the weight back into your bum and your heels so your knees are not tracking over the big toe. Give me 4 more like that, and then we'll add to that basic movement. Exhaling as you sit down, inhale to float up. All right, let's add to that. We're going to come into a low haunch position. So bringing the heels up off the floor, floating the ball all the way overhead, and then peeling back to your standing position on the mat. Readjust your feet if you need to, taking them as narrow or as wide as you need to. If you're doing this freestyle on the mat, coming into a low haunch position, floating the hands overhead, and back to your start position, trying to keep the same distance between the two hands as if you were squeezing a prop between the hands. Slow and controlled, Remember, we don't want to rush through the movements too quickly. We want to challenge our balance. We want to challenge our coordination. Remember to keep your breath flowing. Don't hold the breath. Keep the belly button softly pulled into center the whole time that you're playing. Let's do one more. We're going to come into a lunge line for the next one. So if you are on the tall side, position yourself towards the top end of the mat with enough room to step back into a lunge. You're going to alternate right and left. Lunging back and just floating the ball up to about shoulder height and almost thinking of reaching forward and tapping the ball to the wall in front of you. If you're playing freestyle, arms long and lengthened, and if you need to, you can bend the back knee, drop it to the mat for support before coming back to your start position. Bringing the ball up to about shoulder height and then floating back, alternating left and right. Pausing in your lunge, reaching through your fingertips as if you wanted to tap either the ball or your fingertips to the wall in front of you. Let's do 2 more sets, then we'll add to the lunge. Last one. We're going to add to this basic movement. The next time you lunge back, you're going to twist the ball in the opposite direction, float back to your start position. Lunge back, twisting your ball or your trunk in the opposite direction and floating back to your start position. Reaching long and lengthened through the arms. 8. 7. 6. 1/2. Keep your breath flowing. Make sure that you're not holding the breath. You want to keep feeding oxygen to those muscles. Let's do another 3. And then we'll change our setup on the mat. And you are going to need a piece of wall or a piece of furniture that you can lean into for the next one. Preferably, or you can play freestyle in the middle of your mat. All right. Let's do a little plie line first before we use the ball. So I want you to open up your feet into a wide V with the toes softly splayed out, almost as if you were aiming for the corner of your mat. You're going to stand up nice and tall, bracing your ball, real or imaginary, and squeezing softly into it. On an exhale, you're going to bend the knees, coming into a plie and floating the ball out in front, and then coming back to your start position. So freestyle, you'll be able to see my leg movement better. Pretending that you're squeezing into that ball, bend the knees, and float back to your start position. When you come into the plie line, try to have a soft track of your knees over your ankles. Keep long and lengthened through the spine, lifting your ball real or imaginary out in front of you. Keep squeezing softly into the ball if it's real. Let's do 4, 3, 2, last one. You're going to give me a little side lunge, and you're going to float your ball, real or imaginary, out to the side of the room. Reach long and lengthened through your fingertips as if you wanted to tap your fingertips or your ball to the wall at the opposite end of the room. And once again, don't rush. We want to load. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, last one. I'm going to demo the next one without the ball, or mimicking rather, holding the ball. From your start position, in your soft, almost V-frame through the legs, you're going to come into a plie line, floating the ball all the way overhead, coming onto the heels, and then coming back to your start position. Squeeze into your ball, bring it all the way up onto your toes as you float the ball overhead and come back to your start position. Either with a real ball between the two arms or plain freestyle. Bring the weight all the way up onto your toes, trying to float the ball overhead. Slow and controlled. Let's do 2 more, and then we'll add to this movement, but from a side lunge perspective. Alrighty, so I'll demo with the ball first. You're going to give me a side lunge on the left, coming onto your heel, floating the ball up to about shoulder height, giving me a little rotation, and coming back to your start position. Side lunge, coming all the way onto the toes with a soft rotation. Alternating side to side. If you're doing this sans ball, slow and controlled. Coming onto the toes as you lift your arms up to about shoulder height, and then a soft rotation to that same side. If you're working with an actual ball, remember, give me a soft squeeze into the ball so that you can feel the arms are working and that you're keeping the chest, upper back, and shoulders all connected as you play. Keep your rhythm going. Let's do 2 more sets, and then we're going to need that piece of wall. Yeah. Last one. You're going to come into a modified side lunge, and you can work with the apparatus or without. I'm going to demo both. You're going to stand near to a piece of wall. You're going to have to stand close enough so that you can get your palms or your fingertips just softly connected to the wall. You're going to stand up nice and tall, tucking your tailbone under, pulling your belly button in so that you can feel your core is connected. Attaching just maybe the very tips of your toes to the ball behind you. You're going to lunge back, sliding the ball along your shin, and then bringing it back to your start position. As you bring the ball back in, think of drawing your knee in towards your chest. And I want you to feel a soft contraction as you tuck the tailbone under and pull the ball back in. Shoot for 10 soft repetitions. For the first round, you're going to keep both of your palms connected to the wall in front of you as you play with that lunge line. Maybe if you're playing freestyle, dragging the big toe along the mat and then pulling in as if you wanted to tilt the pubic bone to the 12 o'clock position. Shoot for 10 repetitions, keeping both of your palms or fingertips connected to the wall in front of you. Alright, once you've done 10 with both hands connected to the wall, we're going to change the exercise slightly. The next time you lunge back, you're going to float same hand, so hand on the same side as the leg that's connected to the wall. You're going to float that hand overhead as if you wanted to tap the ceiling with your fingertips, with or without the ball. Remember, as you bring the ball back in, push the top of your foot into the ball and think of tilting your pubic bone to the 12 o'clock position as the knee draws in alongside the other leg so that you can feel that little contraction through the core. You're going to do 10 like this. And once you've done 10, we're going to change it up and we're going to do no hands. So the next time you lunge back, you're going to float both hands off and then bring them back to the mat. And if you're playing freestyle on the mat, maybe you don't have a piece of wall in front of you, you're just going to lunge back, floating both hands overhead, dragging the big toe along the mat as you bring it back to your start position, maybe trying to keep the leg floating off the mat and tucking in as you come back to your start position. Give me 5 more and then we'll change our orientation on the mat. Once you've done your 10 sans hands, you're going to change your orientation, coming to a standing frame, bracing just your hand or maybe even the forearm and the hand on the mat, other hand on your hip, and the other foot firmly placed on the ball. You're going to extend the ball away from you, resting on the back of your heel and pull back to your start position. Extend and bend, keeping your supported leg long and lengthened. If you're playing freestyle without the ball, you're just going to give me a single leg lift up and down. Control. Once you've done 10, you're going to end with that leg long and lengthened, and you're going to focus on your supported leg, bending and extending through the knee. If you're doing this freestyle with no ball, you're going to keep that leg floating as you bend and extend. You're going to shoot for 10 repetitions, and then we're going to change it up. You're going to hold that frame, either floating and having the leg on your ball, or just softly floating off the floor if you're doing this freestyle, and you're going to connect your forearm to the wall as you lean your hip towards the wall and come back to your start position. So you're arcing slightly through your frame, and just allow the other hand to brush softly on the top of your thigh. Let's do 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one, we're going to add to this frame. No hands this time. You're going to start with your top hand just softly just the tips of your fingers attached to the wall. You're going to arc and frame, leaning into your prop and come back to your start position. Arc and frame, leaning back into your wall. If you're doing this stance, the wall, you're going to just start with your fingertips on the wall and you're going to arc and frame and come back. Arc and frame and come back. Let's do 5 more and then we'll work the other side. Keep long and lengthened through the spine and keep your belly button softly pulled in to center. Once you've done your 10, you're going to change your orientation and work side 2. Make sure you're not working the same side twice. We're going to begin with our lunge line, with or without the ball. Both hands connected into your ball for round 1. You're going to lunge back, allowing the ball to slide along your shins. And then as you come back from the lunge line, I want you to pull the knee in, tuck your tailbone under, feel that little contraction in the core, and then come back to your start position. Keep your breath flowing. Keep pushing down with the top of your foot into the ball, trying to keep it from skittering away from you. Once you've done 10 repetitions with both of your hands connected to the mat, to the wall, you're going to change up, same hand to foot. You're going to float that arm overhead and then come back to your fingertip position on the wall. Try to keep your fingertip connection to the wall as light as possible. So try not to lean all of your body weight into the wall. Just give me soft fingertips so that you're using that drawing up, that pull up along your inner thighs and your core to hold the frame steady. Once you've done 10, floating the one arm overhead, you're going to try with both hands floating off and then coming back to your start position. Remember, if you're using the ball, to keep pushing down softly with the top of your foot into the ball as you come back to your standing frame, and then tucking the knee in, tucking your tailbone under, and feeling that soft contraction in the core as you come back to your standing frame. Once you've done 10, you're going to change your orientation on them. You're going to extend the ball away and come back to your start position, or you're just going to give me a single leg lift and lower without the ball. Just lifting and lowering. Once you've done 10 extensions, you're going to end with the ball extended, and you're going to focus on your supported leg, bending and extending. If you're doing this freestyle, keep your leg hovering just off the floor as you bend and extend through your supported leg. Coming as close to the wall as you need to find your support. Once you've done 10, bend and extend on the supported leg. You're going to focus on just resting your forearm into the wall, top hand on your thigh, and you're just going to lean your hip towards the wall and float back to your standing frame. If you're doing this freestyle, you're going to float that one leg just long and lengthen while bumping your hip into the wall and coming back to your start position. You can keep the foot floating off the mat if you like. Shoot for 10 repetitions, or as close to 10 as you can get. And then we're going to change it up And we're going to take that hand higher up along the wall. So just your fingertips are lightly grazing against your wall. And you're going to arc and frame, bumping your hip in the opposite direction before coming back to your start position. Keep pushing softly into the ball. The ball is going to feel like it wants to skitter away from you. So you need to push down through your heel to anchor the ball, and you need to draw up along the inner thighs and then up from your pubic bone towards your breast line to stabilize as you're playing. Shoot for 10 repetitions. Once you've done 10, you're going to change your orientation and you're going to come to either a standing frame, if you're doing this freestyle, or a seated frame on the ball. If you're sitting on the ball, sit up nice and tall and make sure you give yourself enough runway for just now. Sitting up nice and tall, your feet are stacking in parallel. If you're doing this without the ball, you're going to stand with your feet in parallel and you're going to tuck both hands behind your head in a surrender-like fashion with your elbows wide. On an exhale, you're going to dip your left hip bone towards the floor. Inhale to come back. Dip your right hip, elbow. Going to feel a nice little bit of stretch and conditioning through the trunk. Shooting for 10 repetitions. I'm going to call that 5, 4, 3, 2. Keep rooting through your feet. Keep using your inner thighs. We're going to add to this. The next time you drop on side 1, float both hands overhead, reaching through your fingertips, and come back to your surrender position. Dipping off the center line, reaching overhead with the fingertips to tuck back to your surrender position. Keep your breath flowing. Let's do 3 more sets. Then we'll change the movement slightly. Remember to keep your breath flowing. Don't hold on to the breath. Come back to your original start position with the hands tucked behind the head. On an exhale, softly rotate to the left and come back to your start position. Just a mini rotation, stopping when your nose is more or less over your original shoulder line before coming back to the midline. Keep long and lengthened through the spine, whether you're seated on the ball or whether you're standing playing with the freestyle option. Stay here, or you're going to add to this movement and play. The next time you rotate, open up the arms into a soft T, then tuck back behind your head and come back to your start position. Syncing your movement to your breath. Don't be afraid to experiment with your inhalation and your exhalation pattern, but keep the breath flowing. Let's do 2 more sets. As you complete the last one and draw back to center, you're either going to come to a C curve on the ball or you're going to do this freestyle seated on the mat, and I'll demo both. If you're playing with the freestyle, with the ball option, you're going to sit up nice and tall on your prop, bracing the hands on the top of your thighs. You're going to tilt your pubic bone to the 12 o'clock position so that you feel a little contraction in the core, and you're going to roll back just until the ball imprints into the sacrum area and then peel back to your start position. So I want you to feel that rounding out, that contraction, almost as if you were pulling up from the pubis, tucking down from the sternum and pulling in from the sides. Keeping your hands soft and relaxed on the top of your thighs. If you're playing freestyle, you're going to make your way onto the mat, either bracing on your shins or floating the arms out in front. You're going to nod your chin to your chest, round out and C-curve with the weight off your tailbone. Hold that contraction and then peel back to your start position. Either keep reaching through your hands, or if you need a little bit of support, you're going to brace on the top of your thighs as you C-curve out. Keep looking for that work through the core. You're either going to stay here or you're going to add to that movement. So every time we add a layer onto the exercise, you can elect to stay or play. So the next time you come into your C-curve, you're going to bring it down a little bit further, and you're going to float the hands overhead as you tap your shoulder blades to the ball and float back to your start position. So floating up, fingertips to the sky, and come back to your start position. If you're doing this on the mat, you're going to take it into a bent knee roll down. And if you do have a sensitive spine, just place a little bit of padding underneath your lower back for support. You're going to sit up nice and tall. On an exhale, you're going to nod your chin to your chest. You're going to peel down one vertebra at a time, stopping with your hands over your shoulders. Then nod your chin to your chest and peel back up. Whether you're doing this freestyle on the mat or whether you're using your ball, I want you to mobilize down one vertebra at a time and use that same amount of control to imprint first your lower back and then peel back up to your start position. So I want you to feel each little nodule of the spine as you peel down, and each nodule of the upper back, middle back, lower back, as you peel back to your start position. You're going to rinse and repeat. And then you're either going to stay with your roll up, or you're going to take it into a full wheel position or a bridge position if you're playing freestyle on the mat. So sitting up nice and tall with the hands on the top of your thighs. You're going to tilt your pelvis to the 12 o'clock position, start rolling through C-curve, keep the hands floating overhead, dropping them to the mat behind you. So you're almost in a modified wheel or bridge line, and then you're going to peel back up to your start position. Shooting for 10 controlled repetitions, feeling each nodule of the spine, feeling the core as you peel down into your wheel line. If you're doing this freestyle on the mat without the ball, you're going to play in a bridge line. Come down onto the back, bend your knees, connect the soles of the feet to the mat, and start with the arms long and lengthened at your side. You're going to tilt your pubic bone to the 12 o'clock position, start disengaging your bum from the mat, peel up nice and high at the same time, floating your hands overhead to the floor behind you, keeping your chin tucked towards the chest. And then peeling down with the same amount of control, sinking your arm and your leg movement so that your bum and the fingertips connect to the mat simultaneously. Make sure that you come through your bridge line with control, pausing at the apex of your bridge and then peeling back down. So if you're playing with the freestyle option, you're going to work from bridge and we'll add to the bridge line from here. If you were on the ball, you're going to hold your wheel or your bridge the next time you come down, mobilizing down with control, floating the hands overhead, keeping your fingertips connected to the floor overhead. You're going to give me a little marching knee line, drawing one knee up into table, stopping when the knee is over your hip. Slow and control. If you're doing this from the bridge line, freestyle, without the ball, you're going to peel up into your bridge. You're going to hold your bridge steady, keeping the chin tucked towards the chest. And you're going to alternate, drawing up one leg at a time, stopping when the knee is over your hip. Working with control and keeping the bridge line up. So not coming up and down, coming up into the bridge, holding, and then giving me 10 alternate marching bridges. When you've done your 10 repetitions, you're going to bring it into recovery, peeling back up into the seated frame, and just gently leaning forward, hands on the floor, and take a little time out. If you were doing this freestyle, you're just going to come to, from your bridge line, just connect your bottom to the mat, maybe cradle rock your lower back out while you take a look for the next one. If you're playing freestyle, from your bridge line, you're going to think of that marching knee, but you're going to add to it. So you're going to think knee to 90, extend the leg, and then come back to your start position. So knee over hip, then extend and come back. If you're doing this on the ball, we're going to play with the same movement, but you're going to move from your wheel position on the ball. Pick your poison, ball or no ball. Sit up nice and tall, nod your chin to your chest, round out if you're using the ball, or come to your bridge line if you're on the mat. Set up your wheel line, fingertips overhead on the floor behind you. You're going to think knee to 90, extend the leg, and then come back to your start position. Slow and controlled. Shooting for at least 5 repetitions on each side. If you find that holding the wheel line with the head inverted is too much for you, work from bridge. Once you've done your 10, you're going to peel back up, gently folding forward and just releasing your lower back. Maybe just in a soft modified forward fold, Paschimottanasana, but from a seated frame, and just drop your fingertips or your hands to the mat alongside your feet. From here, we're going to change our orientation on the mat, and we're going to come into a plank line. If you're playing freestyle, you're either going to give me a full plank or an elbow plank on the floor. If you're using the ball, set yourself up with the ball at the top end of the mat and enough room to play behind you. Ease your way onto the elbows and the forearms, pushing into the ball, maybe making a little fist or placing your palms down on the ball, or maybe interlacing the hands and pushing down through a single fist if you prefer. Pick your hand position and step back into an elbow plank. Keep pushing down through the forearms as you bend the knees, pushing your bum back towards your heels, coming into a hovering knee position, and float back to your start position. So think relaxed dog. Keep pushing into your forearms. If you're doing this freestyle, find your plank line. Push your bum back towards your heels, hovering your knees off the floor. If you're working from the elbows, the movement is a little bit smaller and your knees a little bit closer to the floor. Shoot for 10 repetitions, and then when you've done your 10, ease your way into child pose, arms soft and relaxed, no tension in the forearms. If you've got your ball, you're going to give me a child on the ball, just hugging the ball in towards your belly and draping yourself over the ball while you take a look for the next exercise. From your elbow plank position, you're going to give me a little knee draw, but I want lots of control through the core and the inner thighs. Find your elbow plank line and then think knee to belly and come back. Knee to belly and come back, trying to keep the ball from skittering around. So you've got to push down through the forearms, use your core to stabilize. If you're doing the freestyle option, from your plank, slow and controlled, pull the knee in, feel your inner thighs, feel your lower abs contracting. If you're doing this on the elbows, you can give me just a soft knee tap alternating side to side, shooting for between 5 and 10 repetitions. Once you've done 10, or as close to 10 sets as you can get, you're going to come into recovery. Child on the ball or off the ball while you take a look for the next exercise. We're going to use that little knee draw that we played with, and we're going to subtly add to it. Alrighty. And you've got some play options here. So from your elbow position on the ball, you're going to think knee to nose and then take the leg out to the side. Knee to nose and take it out to the side. If you feel nice and stable here, you're going to add a rotation through the hip in one fluid motion, pulling the knee in towards the ball and then floating the leg out to the side of the room. If you're playing freestyle from your plank, you're going to think knee to nose and then out to the side. Knee to nose, out to the side. If that feels good, start moving in a more fluid line, almost tracing a little circle through the hips. Think 360. If you're working low to the elbow, if you're working on the elbows, you don't have as much room to play. So modify the movement slightly and just give me knee to the side, knee to the side, knee to the side. Wherever you decide to play, make sure that you're keeping your core braced and keep drawing up softly along the inner thighs and from the pelvic floor towards the belly button line to keep the core engaged. Shoot for between 5 and 10 repetitions and then ease your way into child pose and just take a little time out. We've got one more exercise to go from this position, at least. All right, come into child pose and take your recovery, releasing your wrists if you were in the full plank line. We're going to bring it to a single leg lift for the last one. Finding your way back to your plank line on the ball. Brace softly through your forearms, lift and float one foot off the mat, and then alternate to the other side. Don't pop and rotate through the hips, so just a soft little lift. And float the toe behind you as if you were trying to tap the wall behind you. If you're doing this sans ball, from your plank line, you're going to lift and float. Legs should feel pretty light. To make the leg float up, I want you to imagine drawing up from the kneecap along the quad and along the hamstring towards the glute and the lower belly area to make the leg float up. Whether you're working on the elbow or from the full plank line. Slow and controlled. Shoot for between 5 and 10 repetitions. And then once you've done your 5 or 10, you're going to ease your way back into child pose. You're going to take a little time out. And then we're going to change our orientation on the mat. And you're going to set yourself up on the side of the body. Either with the ball between the two legs or mimicking holding the ball between the two legs. And I would suggest maybe at about foot or ankle, so you can grasp it firmly between the ankles and the feet. You're going to give me a small prop on the bottom arm, resting your head in the crook of your hand. And you've got your hips, your knees and your ankles more or less stacked in a straight line. You're going to squeeze into your ball, real or imaginary, and you're going to hover your bottom leg off the mat while you lift and lower the ball up and down, feeling a nice little pinch in the top waist. You're going to shoot for 10 little lifts. And when you've done 10, you're going to use the ball as a steering wheel and drive to the front, drive to the back. Keeping that squeeze into the ball so soft so that you can feel that nice burning sensation in the inner thighs. Let's do 4, 3, 2, last one. Come down to the mat at any time should you need to take a rest, yeah? All right, so the next one, we're going to do a mini leg pull. Make your movement small. You're going to think of moving in a crane-like motion. Hovering the ball just off the mat. Keep the squeeze into the ball. Come just in front of your hip line and just behind your hip line. Come in front of your hip line, bring it back to neutral, and just behind your hip line. You're just going to shoot for 5 repetitions in front and behind your hip line. Come back to your start position, bend the knees and extend. Bend, extend. Bend, extend. Bend, extend, stay or add. Next time you bend, roll back almost as if you wanted to just be shy of your tailbone and then come back to your start position. Bend, roll, come back, extend. Bend or tuck, roll, come back, extend. Tuck, roll back, roll forward, extend. Let's do one more. You're going to come into a seated frame from here, and you're going to give me some seated roll downs with or without your ball. Sitting up nice and tall, feet soft and relaxed and parallel. If you've got a sensitive spine, place that padding behind your lower back. Nod your chin to your chest, peel down into a full seated roll down. Maybe allowing the ball to tap the floor behind you, and then peel back to your seated frame with your shoulders over your hips. Nod your chin to your chest, keep looking down to your belly button as you roll up and down with control. Sit up nice and tall with the ball hovering at about shoulder height as you come back up. Let's do one more. Keep bracing into your feet. You're going to end in a seated frame. Feet are open about hip width distance apart, and you're floating your ball, real or imaginary, out in front of you. You're going to seesaw over your toes and just behind your hip line. Over your toes and just behind your hip line. So as you come back, I want you to give me an L shape through the spine, and I want you to draw up along the inner thighs and along the core. End your last one hooked over your toes and hold for 10 seconds. Feeling a little stretch into the lower back and almost framing your head between the 2 arms. Then sit up nice and tall. Effect a little switcheroo on the mat so that you can work on side 2. Grasping the ball between your feet. Come into a low prop on the mat. You're going to lift and lower. Hovering that bottom foot just off the mat. Then begin driving like a little steering wheel, keeping that bottom leg hovering off the mat as you drive in front of your hip bone and behind the hip bone. In front of the hip bone and behind the hip bone. Let's do 2 more. And then we'll take it from here into that little leg pull if you need to come down to the mat and take a time out. All right, keeping the feet hovering off the mat, you're going to draw forward just in front of your hip line, come back to neutral, pull just behind your hip line, come back, pull just in front of your hip line, come back, just behind your hip line. Just shoot for 5 sets. Inner thighs should be speaking to you. Remember to come down and take a time out if you need it. All right. Last exercise, and you can keep it simple or you can add to it. You're going to keep your legs hovering, bend the knees and extend. Bend, and extend. Either stay here or add that little rotation. So the next time you bend, roll back, just shy of your tailbone, and then come back the way you went in. Rocking off your side, come back and extend. Tuck, roll back, roll forward, extend. Tuck, roll back, roll forward, extend. Tuck, roll back, roll forward, extend. Let's do one more. Sit up nice and tall. We're going to come into those roll downs. So if you need that padding for your lower back, place it in position. Sit up nice and tall, feet in a soft parallel line, squeezing into your ball, real or imaginary. Nod your chin to your chest, brace into your feet. Pull up an imaginary zip from the inside of your ankle bone all the way along the inseam of your leg, and then pull up really tightly from the pubic bone towards your sternum. Remembering to keep your gaze inward. So keep looking towards your belly button, both on the roll down, but more importantly on the roll up, so that you're getting that nice rounded C-curve frame on the spine, not bumping and bruising it, and finding that contraction through the core. If you look up to the ceiling, you tend to lose the connection to the back and the core. Let's do two more, and then we'll play with that little seesaw action. You're going to reach forward over your toes and just behind, keeping an L shape on your back, almost as if you were reclining the seat in your car. So you're really strong from the tailbone to the shoulder blades, and you're drawing up along the inner thighs and the core as you lean back. Let's do two more, and we'll hold that little forward fold. Tucking over your toes, almost pushing into your big toes and all of the toes, in fact, as you brace softly into the ball and tuck the head between the two arms. Hold, stretch out the lower back, and then gently rest the ball on your thighs. Nod your chin to your chest to end off your practice for today. Thank you so much for coming out and playing with me today. I really hope that you enjoyed today's class, whether you opted to play with or without your ball. Remember to give me a like if you did enjoy, to shoot me your comments and your feedback, and remember to subscribe with your notifications on. I shall see you all for yoga on the mat tomorrow. Till then, keep it light.